hopefully what our customers will see is the kind of the role we take as a company in the community that is the East of England, and that they would start to see how we are improving our performance year on year in terms of our contribution to environmental well-being, but also to the society and the communities that we operate within. So I think it's going to be a kind of, hopefully, a long-term understanding of how we're a purpose-driven organisation, rather than a kind of, oh, you've got a badge, that's fine, we trust you. We have to earn that trust by demonstrating year in, year out that we're doing what they want us to do.
You are listening to The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards, with Matthew Childs and Cindy Paragill.
If purpose is done properly, purpose is everything and everywhere, because it's the reason to exist, which means it's the core direction of the organization, which means that all decisions should be anchored around that purpose, and therefore it should show up everywhere. Purpose-driven organizations talk about it being in our DNA, and they say that for a reason, because it's not something you can separate for yourself. It's not something over the side. It's not a department. It is the way you make decisions and hold yourself to account.
Hello, this is Matthew Childs, and welcome to The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards. Now, the voices you heard at the top of the episode were those of Andy Brown of Anglian Water and independent pracademic Dr Victoria Hurth. And they were talking about what it means to be a purpose-driven organisation, or PDO. And they were both speaking to me at an event to mark the launch of the development process for a new international standard. And a pretty important one at that, a standard all about corporate purpose, designed to help organisations go beyond a profit-first mindset. The development of the international standard, which will take place over a couple of years, will see the conversion through the ISO process of a current standard, PAS 808, and involve an international committee of experts from all around the world, representing a wide range of stakeholders across more than 170 countries, with an anticipated launch of early 2027. Now, the announcement of the standards development process comes as research from BSI reveals that 65% of people globally say they consider a company's social and environmental purpose when making buying decisions. And 65% of people also say they would abandon a product or business acting inconsistently with its purpose. So it's clear that purpose has power. At the event, I spoke to Andy and Victoria about this issue of purpose and the ambition for the new international standard, and also about Anglian Water's experience of using PAS 808. Now, before we hear from them both, a reminder that you can rate, review and subscribe to The Standard Show wherever you get your podcasts. And you can get in touch and find and follow us on social media too. All the details are in the show notes.
The standard PAS 808 is all about corporate purpose. It describes the worldviews, principles, and behaviors of a purpose-driven organization and determines what might need to be done for an organization to be aligned with them. The PAS sets out how, by becoming more purpose-driven, organizations can help tackle some pretty big challenges: the enormous dangers of the climate emergency, biodiversity loss, growing income inequality, and meeting the increasing demands of society. A PAS is a fast-track standardization document, the result of an expert consulting service from BSI. It defines good practice for a product, service, or process, and is a powerful way to establish the integrity of an innovation or approach. A PAS is best suited to areas where new concepts are becoming widely accepted and minimal change is expected. Sponsored by industry leaders, governments, trade associations, and professional bodies, a PAS is developed by a steering group or advisory group of stakeholders selected from relevant fields and led by BSI. It is also an important route to international standards. Around 30% of PASs developed by BSI have gone on to become international standards, such as ISO standards.
So, Andy Brown is Group Chief Sustainability Officer at Anglian Water, the largest water and recycling company in England and Wales, and one of the sponsoring organisations for PAS 808. Anglian Water worked with BSI to establish and implement PAS 808 to confirm and challenge the company's commitment to environmental and social well-being. Andy will be involved in the development of the new international standard. But I started by asking him, what does purpose mean for Anglian Water?
So in 2019, we as a company changed our Articles of Association. So that's basically the constitutional document that says, what we're there to do. And we added purpose, environmental and social purpose, into that document alongside a fair return to our investors. So our purpose now is to deliver environmental and social prosperity to the region we serve.
Now, you've been using PAS 808. How have you been doing that?
So PAS 808 was created so it could be used in all sorts of ways. So organisations can use it to create their purpose framework, or they can use it to test elements to see whether they're embedded. Or what we've done is to go a complete kind of assessment of how we operate based on the principles of PAS 808. So we've done an internal assessment looking at all the 7 principles and all the behaviours that kind of sit beneath those to see where those appeared in our organisation. And then we've kind of judged their maturity to say, well, are we seeing it at all? Are we seeing it ad hoc? Are we seeing it in most of the business? Are we seeing it fully embedded? Then once we've done that internally, we brought BSI in from an audit perspective, because they're our quality auditors, to have a look to see whether we'd been accurate in kind of that maturity. And then they did a complete assessment and audit process with 35 people from our CEO and our legal director and our treasurer right the way through to drill operators on the ground to see whether they could find the evidence of that purpose being truly lived.
So you talked there about doing this in a very comprehensive way. I just wonder, from an employee's perspective, how would they have experienced that change going through using PAS 808?
So I think our employees would have seen a number of different changes. One, we've actually changed the way we reward people. So we have gone from a kind of personal performance-related pay process to a company purpose performance bonus. So we've taken just a small number of metrics for the kind of broad employee base and said, right, okay, everybody's going to contribute to our purpose, and that's how you will be rewarded at the end of the day. For senior managers, there's a much more comprehensive approach to that, which has quite a number of metrics, including how we are doing overall in terms of the delivery of our purpose. So that's one way. The other way is how we've brought purpose into our decision-making governance and processes. And depending on whether you are involved in kind of really large-scale, expensive capital delivery programs, there's quite an intense process for estimating how purpose is being taken account of. Or if you're, just anybody in the company who's making any kind of decision, we have a purpose prompt card, which you can use to just stimulate your thought process to say, okay, how in making this decision am I contributing to environmental and social prosperity? And that's broken down into what it means to natural capital, social capital, the capital of our people, the assets that we create, how intellectually kind of, how we really explore different ways of doing things, and are we being financially sustainable as well?
So obviously going through some significant change here as an organisation in using this particular standard. So that's internally. Just what about externally? How would customers know or feel that you're going through this change?
So that's a really interesting question, because we never really approached this as a badge collecting exercise. So the intention is not that our customers should know we align with PAS 808. I don't know whether they're really interested in that. Hopefully what our customers will see is the kind of the role we take as a company in the community that is the East of England, and that they would start to see how we are improving our performance year on year in terms of our contribution to environmental well-being, but also to the society and the communities that we operate within. So I think it's going to be a kind of, hopefully, a long-term understanding of how we're a purpose-driven organisation, rather than a kind of, oh, you've got a badge, that's fine, we trust you. We have to earn that trust by demonstrating year in, year out that we're doing what they want us to do.
You talked there about that year in, year out. I just wonder, where are you on your purpose journey?
So as I say, I mean, we changed our articles of association, so that's a kind of legal change, which is quite a big step change, which not many organisations have done. I think the way I describe it is that we've rebuilt our engine, we've rewired the kind of chassis. What we're onto now is the kind of fine-tuning of the engine and the performance to make sure that we've got all of the right pieces of the puzzle in place to be fully embedded with purpose. Now we've got to make sure that that's delivering the outcomes that we intended.
Now, you've been on the inside as well here, Andy. You've been involved in the development of PAS 808. What excites you about the new standard?
What excites me is the buzz in the room tonight.
It's very good, isn't it?
We've got, well over 100 people here representing organisations, big and small, businesses, but also other organisations that have got an interest in purpose. What really excites me is that I've had lots of conversation with some big kind of international companies about PAS 808, and they said, oh, it's really good, really great framework, but we're an international organisation, so we can't really just adopt a UK standard. So what I'm hoping is, as we move into the international world, that's where we're going to pick up some of these great big, household name kind of multinational kind of organisations. And I think we are genuinely on the cusp of that, and I think it'll be a fantastic opportunity to create alignment so that organisations and businesses around the world really understand what being purpose-led is about.
Standards affect all of us every day, wherever we go, whatever we do. By defining good practice, they help people and organizations to do things better. Each year, standards bodies publish thousands of standards, and we are looking for more people like you to join our community of standards makers. We welcome applicants from all fields, backgrounds, and career stages. Our goal is a simple one: to have a balance of views around the table. By becoming a standards maker, you could help to improve the way things are made and done, like creating healthier and more inclusive workplaces, developing higher quality healthcare systems, making advances in AI governance, or accelerating climate action. If you want to make a difference and shape the world through standards, start your standards making journey now. Details of how to do so are in the show notes.
At the end of my conversation with Andy Brown, he talked about the new international standard on purpose-driven organisations, something I picked up with Victoria Hurth. Working in the field of sustainability for more than 20 years, Victoria describes herself as an independent pracademic, working for a world where organisations flourish by serving the long-term well-being for all. She's a standards maker too, having co-led the 5-year development of the first global ISO standard for governance of organisations, ISO 37000, and she was the technical author for PAS 808. And not only that, she's the project lead for the new international standard on purpose-driven organisations. I started by asking, from her perspective, what does it mean for an organisation to be purpose-driven?
If purpose is done properly, purpose is everything and everywhere, because it's the reason to exist, which means it's the core direction of the organisation, which means that all decisions should be anchored around that purpose, and therefore it should show up everywhere. Purpose-driven organisations talk about it being in our DNA, and they say that for a reason, because it's not something you can separate for yourself. It's not something over the side. It's not a department. It is the way you make decisions and hold yourself to account.
And what excites you most now about the development of this new standard?
This is a real catalytic moment for the world. It's been a long time coming, creating ISO 37000 in governance. If you don't know what governance is and what good governance is, you can't create a standard that says what's governance that aligns us with a sustainable future fully. So this is a moment we are turning the national standard, using it to say what is the consensus globally. If we can arrive at an international standard on purpose-driven organizations that really does align with a sustainable future, then we create the basis on which people can move forward at speed, with confidence, with clarity, and be able to map against the existing system. Why is that holding them back? Because the reality is any purpose-driven organization is going to exist in our existing system, which is not purpose-driven, and which is actually, in many cases, the opposite. So being able to have a consensus-based global standard that allows you to ask those questions. Why are we not acting this way? What laws are holding us back? What behaviors are holding us back is absolutely critical. So to give people the confidence to move forward at speed.
So actually on that, why is purpose now so important? Why do we use this word? It wasn't a word being used maybe 5-10 years ago. Why is it so important now?
Because we are in danger of losing what's most important to us. The science has been telling us for at least 3 decades that humanity has our toes over a cliff's edge, and our long-term well-being is under existential threat. And yet the economy exists to optimize well-being for the society. So our economy is essentially driving our existential crisis. If we don't find a way to operationalize that economy differently through organizations making different decisions, we're just going to keep going in the wrong direction. So we're doing what Einstein said. We're trying to solve the problems within the box that created it. So what this standard does, this international standard in purpose, is it says that's the box that's governed in a way that's actually causing us harm. Here's what it looks like to have a governance frame that drives good.
We've heard a lot tonight at this event about paradigm shift. Now, obviously, the standard has a role to play, but who else has a role to play in making sure we go through this transformational change that you're talking about?
Everyone. Ultimately, the citizens, and that includes everyone in every other part of the system. We're all citizens of planet Earth and a nation. We are the ultimate governing body. We delegate to government. Government then governs on our behalf organizations and their decision making. So every part of the system essentially has a role in governing the decisions that are made and therefore the impacts we have. So we all need to get governance literate, and we need to understand what good governance, which is purpose-driven governance, looks like, and become active participants in that system, because if we don't, we're going to lose what's most important to us. We really are fiddling at the edges, trying to work from our current system in what we think is pragmatic and feasible, but it's only pragmatic and feasible within the box that's killing us. The real pragmatism and the real feasibility is sitting outside that box. So if we want to be able to understand the nature of the urgency and act in a logical, appropriate way, we have to get outside of that box. Because what we have now is increasing tension. People are sat in that box. They can't make different decisions, but yet they can see the world collapsing around them. And that's why we know that whilst it's very hard to be purpose-driven at the moment, how many of the crises which we know are coming down the road will it take before either we lose the market economy, because we, like in the pandemic, we just say someone else make the decisions, or do we transform the market economy to solve these problems through enterprise and free up business strategy to do what it needs to do, and organizational strategy. That's what this standard does. Creates the strong governance frame within which innovation can flourish.
And how do you hope, through using this standard, organizations will jump? What will motivate them to jump first?
Well, my theory is organizations are made up of individuals. Those individuals need the confidence to embody the future that we need to create. They're not going to do that without unity and clarity, because we won't act alone. We need to know that we're not on our own. But we can't unify around nothing. We need to have clarity. And what this standard does is create unity and clarity. So clarity about what we mean, so that we can all have a joined up conversation and we can challenge each other productively, and unity and confidence that we're not on our own, that we are all together. And this 2-year process to create the ISO gives us that opportunity. If we imagine now how many people across the world are trying to make this happen, but they're using slightly different language, or they don't know that each other exists. This is 2 years where we could bring the world together, and there's nothing better than ISO as a platform to do that. So my call to action for everybody who's listening to this is get involved. This is our opportunity to co-create the future. And if we're not clear what that looks like, the status quo will prevail.
So Victoria, talked there about 2 years to create the standard. I just wonder if I look a bit further ahead, maybe in 10 years' time, you and I are standing here in 2034, maybe over a glass of wine as well at that point. What will the world look like here? What success do you hope this standard will bring?
We will have a system whereby organizations are constituted and allowed to exist and access our precious resources. If they can prove they're going to do something useful, we have the mother of all innovation issues. And even before that, it's not an innovation agenda to say have resources but just don't harm them and that's okay. The whole point is organizations should be doing something useful for the well-being of society over time. So we will make that true. And any organization that exists will be able to describe and justify that to themselves and all their stakeholders. Then we will have organizations that understand the science behind all the critical social and environmental systems and can prove to themselves and stakeholders that they are protecting and enhancing those systems while delivering their purpose. And the only organizations that will exist are those that can do that within a business model that is profitable enough to pay the bills, meet the expectation of the stakeholders and invest in the purpose. And that's where the creativity comes in, to create those business models that actually work. And at the moment we have asset-stripping business models. We liquidate our assets, we call it profit, we call it success. That will be in the past. We'll be in a future where, and we will have very little differentiation between different types of organizations. Governments and organizations, charities are organizations, businesses are. What unites us is way greater than what separates us. We spend too much time focusing on those differences.
Our thanks to Andy Brown and Victoria Hurth for speaking to us about purpose for this episode of The Standard Show. Now, if you want to discover more about PAS 808 and the new international standard on purpose-driven organisations, then check out the links in the show notes. And if you want to know more about how to get involved in standards to co-create the future, as Victoria passionately suggested, then again, check out the links in the show notes. And one of those links is to an episode of our Standards Maker series, in which Victoria tells the story of how and why she got involved in standards. And finally, the show notes are also where you can find details of our socials and all the other ways to get in touch with us here on The Standard Show.
You have been listening to an episode of The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards, with Matthew Childs and Cindy Paragill.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.